Welcome back to the Backwards Hat CMO podcast. On today's pod, we are going to talk about the actual impact that social media can have on your brand. I'll also get into some of the tactics that you can use that include your actual C-suite. We've got all of that, and as always, a whole lot more coming up on the show today. Now, for those of you out there that, of course, use social media, which is basically everybody, their brother, their sister, and including some very creative cats and dogs have their own social media accounts at this point. At the end of the day, social media is really all about connecting with your specific audience. That is, of course, maybe one of the most obvious statements you've ever heard on a podcast before. It's like saying, I know water is wet. Of course, water is wet. Of course, social media posts should be memorable. That is a given. Now, at the end of the day, what we actually see, at least in the business marketplace, is a significant amount of missed opportunities by a lot of the brands out there. The brands simply don't understand the importance of actually building memorable content on a consistent basis. Yes, every once in a while, a brand will put out something that's absolutely memorable and will actually garner the attention of the target audience that they were actually looking for. But most companies don't actually execute on that particular side of the strategy in any sort of consistent basis. Now, if you're a startup, if you are an established brand, if you are an up and coming company that is experiencing a lot of growth and momentum, regardless of the size and or position of your company at this point, one thing is absolutely for certain, and that is you should be consistent with the frequency of your social media posts, and certainly strive at the very least to make your posts memorable. At the end of the day, social media, quite frankly, should be fun. It should be informative. And of course, it needs to be memorable. There is just, quite frankly, absolutely so many things out in the marketplace today that if you want your posts and if you want your brand to actually be heard, you're absolutely going to have to think both inside and outside of the box. I'm not really sure why people always think you have to think outside of the box. There's nothing wrong with thinking inside the box as well. You know, the inside the box piece when it comes to social media is really understanding exactly who your target audience is. If you're thinking inside the box, you're actually thinking about who are the specific people we are actually trying to reach, and why would they even care about anything that we're actually going to post about. It's like when you decide you're going to build a new company or you're going to introduce a new product into the marketplace. Product market fit certainly becomes the most important thing that you and your company can focus in on. Exactly why are people going to purchase your product? Exactly why do people actually purchase your product today? Those are all the key components of any really successful company in the marketplace. They have a strong understanding of the why customers actually take action. Look, the same thing can be said for social media. Why would somebody actually care about your cybersecurity post on Twitter, or excuse me, X, or your cybersecurity video on TikTok? Why would anybody care about that? Why would they care about cybersecurity in the first place? You actually really need to sort of dig in your heels, so to speak, on understanding the reason customers are actually going to become customers of your brand in the first place. Look, I'm not in any way opposed to big brands testing out TikTok strategies or testing out strategies on X or testing out strategies on YouTube or Instagram or Threads or any of these social media platforms. I think ultimately it comes down to are your customers actually going to be receptive to the social media posts that you're putting into those channels? And if they are going to be receptive to your social media posts that you're putting into those channels, will they actually take action on those posts at some point to help further your brand along? Now, I want to be really clear here. Social media is not advertising. Social media is not about getting somebody to click through on an ad. Look, there's a bunch of other things for that. Social media largely is about building brand. And when you treat social media about building brand, eventually you will actually end up in a world where you actually generate significantly more revenue as a result of it. So, finally, if you will, my final quick thoughts on social media as it stands at the end of February and the year 2024. And that is simply to say, frequency matters. For those of you that have spent time with me at all over the last couple years, you know that I am a big believer in frequency. And I believe that frequency matters in everything you do when it comes to your social media strategy. Now, I also believe that the best influencers your brand probably have actually live inside your C-suite and or your VP or director levels. And I also think that it's very important for frequency to be a big part of your leadership social media strategy. Now, there, I said it, leadership social media strategy. Your C-suite, quite frankly, probably has some of the biggest influence that you could possibly have on your direct customers, especially if you are in the B2B tech space. Look, I get it. If you're in the consumer market space, your CEO constantly putting tweets out might not get you exactly where you want to go. Now, a lot of you might disagree with a lot of the things that Elon Musk actually says. I know I do. But one thing is for sure, and that is Elon understands the importance and the power and clout that his name has. So much so that he went out and he bought a social media network or platform to give him even more voice. I guess that was the reason why he did that. It's still unclear exactly what Elon is trying to do with X at this point. Still, it is important for your C-suite to understand that. I don't care if you're in a stodgy, I guess, non-sexy, non-exciting industry. It doesn't matter. Social media is essentially the one place that people, and that is your customers, even if you're in the B2B space, are going to live on an actual daily basis. Just ask yourself, how can you get in front of your direct audience on a daily basis? And the answer to that is yes, you can go spend a ton of money on traditional television. Yes, you can go spend a ton of money on radio and create a blanket marketing strategy that gets you 70 to 80% of the households in North America. And you can spend upwards of hundreds of millions of dollars to actually do that. Or you can actually spend money on digital advertising and try to accomplish that in the same way for, quite frankly, a lot of money as well. Or you can try a social media strategy that actually takes the key influencers of your brand, puts them out into the marketplace, and then use post promotions to actually make sure your brand is actually being seen by the size and audience that you want it to be seen by. So, frequency certainly becomes important. I'm going to give you some blanket statements about frequency. Now, if you're an individual and you realize your target audience is on LinkedIn, at the very least, as an individual on LinkedIn, you should be posting a minimum of 5 times a week. Now, the reality is that number should be significantly higher. I have a friend who's a AI influencer, and one of the things that he does as an AI influencer, because he's got a consulting company that's associated to that, but one of the things that he does as an AI influencer is he actually posts 3 to 4 times a day. Now, I'm not saying the CEO of your B2B tech company should be posting 3 to 4 times a day, but I would say that at a minimum, they should be posting once a day. And if you have a very creative C-suite, or you have very creative C-suite influencers, I would up that number to 2 to 3 times a day. Now, in terms of your brand, how often should your brand be posting? The answer to that question is pretty similar to how you should handle your leadership strategy. And that is, a minimum of once a day, all the way up to 4 to 5 times a day. It just depends on the market that your brand is actually in. All right. That is it. A bit of a ramble, a bit of a Backwards Hat CMO podcast ramble and rant for you today. I would love to hear what you have to say, North America. Definitely drop in your comments when you have a chance. Also, if you haven't checked out our YouTube channel, we recently launched that. Primarily, we're really running some cool things around great ads and great commercials that have appeared on television. The latest one we ran was the Rachel from the good folks over at Uber Eats. All right, that is it for today's episode of the Backwards Hat CMO podcast. As always, North America, I'm Dave DeBaugh, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your work week.
You've been listening to the Backwards Hat CMO podcast with Dave Daba, presented by Stealth.ltd.